I thought there's sort of three topics that I'd like to cover, and let me just kind of go over those three topics. I thought that we could talk about one, growing the sport of hunter jumpers in particular, and really I've been looking at growing the entire horse sports as a whole. Two, I'd like to talk about the cost of showing, because that's just been a huge hot button that we've been having a lot of discussions on. And then three, educating our riders. I know you and I kind of talked about the programs you have in place, and I had some concepts. So I'd like to just ask you some open-ended questions around those things, and then give you my 2 cents on some of those topics. And definitely just start by saying thank you for being willing to come on and being willing to be accessible. So I really appreciate that. And there's some things about USHJA that I'm really, really excited about, like the national finals format that you created. But let's dive straight into it. I think when I spoke with you last week, you were saying that USHJA membership is at approximately 40,000, and it's been that way for a long, long time. And so I guess my question to you around that is, what do you think is sort of the highest potential for the sport in the United States from a membership number? What's your membership goal? And what do you kind of see as the reason why we're at this 40,000 number, and some of your plans to get beyond that?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on here. And I have given your question some thought since last week, and I think about this so differently than you do. So you're wanting us to choose a great big goal, and I think it would be great to have a lot of members. And I mean, if you look at the horse landscape across our country, there are so many people involved in horses. But I have to go back to the very first time I ran for president of USHJA, and I did not prevail in that case. My biggest thing that I had to say, and I'm going to continue to beat the same drum, is there is no reason for people to belong to USHJA at this moment, other than the fact that they have to if they want to show. And so to try to increase the member numbers when you've basically got people by the throat and you're trying to force them into your organization is not going to make you a popular person at all. And so my planning committee and I have been working very hard on the idea of the value proposition that we have for our members. And that's one of our strongest things that we care about. We have to fix that before we can really choose a lofty goal of membership, because otherwise we're just forcing more people to come into something that many people do not understand nor value.
Okay. So you don't feel like there's a strong USHJA value proposition?
I think that there should be. I don't think that there has been in the past. I mean, without being a recognized affiliate of USEF and the mandatory membership for horse shows that comes with that privilege, why would people have joined us in the first place? And I'm not trying to step on my organization that I run. I think it's a wonderful organization. It with so many benefits to people, but I don't think that people understand that. And until this recent planning committee has been meeting, and my planning committee meets every week for an hour, and they have been meeting since February. So you can tell we've had a lot of chance to talk about this. Getting our value proposition for members is important. And so, what are the things of our value proposition? So advocacy for sure, between the members and the Federation, within USHJ itself, within the horse world, being stronger as a group. But probably our largest value proposition is education. And then we have many, many horse show programs that our members enjoy.
Okay. Gotcha. So how long have you been president for?
I am in the beginning of my 3rd year.
Okay. And USHJA has been around for 15 years, right?
Yes, we were founded in 2004.
Okay. So, but you still don't feel like you guys have communicated a value proposition
No, not yet, but I think that we're getting ready to. We fully recognize the fact that we lack in this way. And, it's time. In the beginning, when USHJA was formed, we spent a lot of time creating new things, and there was huge energy for that. And I think if you're or were a part of that committee structure that did that, that seemed really, really exciting. But I'm not sure that we actually reached out back to our membership and touched base with them to see what they wanted. And so that is a really strong focus for me.
Got it. Okay. Well, it sounds like a little bit of what we're doing today. And you're doing a big town hall circuit. And so, well, let me give you my 2 cents of what I think, when I look at the USHJA, I look at you guys as pretty much a good way to measure where are we at with hunter jumper as a sport in the country. And I look at numbers like tennis has 700,000 USTA members approximately. So I look at tennis at 700,000 and I look at hunter jumpers at 40,000. And I just think that we could be at 1 million. And I know that it just doesn't seem with 38 million horse enthusiasts in the country. I think it's one of the coolest sports. I play a lot of sports, tennis, basketball, baseball as a kid. And I think it's a really cool sport. It's a really marketable sport. I think that, it would be fun to set a big number. They say sort of set your goals in concrete and your plans in sand. Like, I think that USHJA could say, listen, we're going to get 1 million people in 5 years, and let's create a plan to do that. Let's get the best marketers in a room. Let's get the best consultants we can and design a plan. I'm not saying that you and I have to have the exact answer today, but that would be something that I'd love to see somebody like you embrace, rather than just say, it just doesn't seem like you have much of a plan.
I think we have more of a plan than you realize. It's just that we have not yet unveiled our plan, and it's before our board embraces what we're doing as a planning committee. I don't think it's fair to just jump ahead of my board and say, well, gosh, this is what we're going to do. That would make me a dictator, which is clearly not what I am.
Okay, got it. The other idea I had to sort of grow it would be, I really think that the USHJA recognized riding academies should be the foundation, the pillar, especially for growth, because that's the entry point that a lot of people get to the sport of hunter jumpers, would be these entry-level programs. And so if, somebody like USHJA could spend their marketing dollars marketing to non-horse people that are considering other sports with a marketing message that was like, try hunter jumpers, and find your local recognized riding academy. And if an organization like USHJA was driving traffic to their recognized riding academies and providing that value proposition, where if somebody like me opened a USHJA recognized riding academy, I might have traffic showing up from your marketing dollars at my barn, buying lessons, and then obviously my students will go on to become USHJA members from all the potential value you guys could provide me in terms of curriculums and even benefits, even helping me source lesson horses. So that's sort of where I'm seeing, maybe that's part of the plan already, and I don't know about it, but as sort of a good starting point to grow it.
Sure. Well, Recognized Riding Academy is a fairly new program for us, and I can't say that it has yet quite found its feet. So we have a really good leader in Marnie Langer, and I think that Marnie has a pretty good sense of how riding academies work, as she has one, Hanson Dam, in California. So I think as that program gets stronger, it will be better. But I mean, it's very early days right now, and I would say people have very mixed feelings about the Riding Academy program, because unless you're going to do it like the British Horse Society, where you go and examine them, you don't really know what people are doing there. And so some people are very enthusiastic. They want to join. And, we have a solid group of them. Several have been with us for a couple of years. Then you have people say, well, how could you recognize those people? They don't know what they're doing. And without us actually going out to look at them, we would have no idea actually at this moment whether they're good at their job or bad at their job. So that's a problem that we have to really get our heads around.
Okay, got it. So, so right now you have no control over if they're good or bad, is what you're saying?
No, if you apply, as long as you meet the standards that we ask for,
Yeah.
then you are in.
Got
You
it.
don't have to pass a test or anything like that. So,
Okay.
and one thing that you should understand is since USHJA is volunteer run and staff facilitated, a lot of what we do, the volunteers do a lot of the legwork on stuff, and volunteers have jobs. So
Yeah.
it can be very, very slow to get stuff done with volunteers. They're amazing. I love working with them. I mean, I'm a volunteer.
Yeah.
So, but
So
it is.
You don't make anything off being.
When I travel for USHJA, I get a stipend and they pay my travel expenses. But no, I'm a volunteer.
So would you be in favor of reorganizing so that there were paid people, but we got better results maybe rather than volunteers that aren't getting the results that we need?
I think it's a matter of organizing our volunteers and getting them, to understand how much work they're taking on when they're taking it on. I'm probably not wanting to have paid positions because that would mean our membership fees would have to go up, and I really don't want to be charging people more than we charge already. So I think it's a matter of harnessing the goodwill and energy of volunteers, and we're lucky. We have some great volunteers. But when life overcomes you, then what's going to give, your paid job or your volunteer job? It'll be your volunteer job.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't have that.
Well, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that nobody at USHA is making anything.
Well, so volunteer wise, but we do have a staff as well. And the staff is amazing, but there's only so much that they can handle.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Well, let's move on to the second thing that's a real hot button for people is the cost of really the A circuit in general. And something that I bring up a lot is that, out of principle, we've sort of created this hierarchy of different horse shows where there's, light, there's C, there's B, there's A, there's double A. And A, I don't think that we have, or number one, I don't think we have enough numbers to really separate people into, 5 or 6 different circuits. And then 2, I don't really understand the rationale behind creating different, I'm going to try to put everybody on mute here because I'm getting some background noise here. I don't understand the rationale behind using sort of amenities and prize money to create those distinctions. But I guess I'll just start by saying, do you think the A circuit 100 number shows are overpriced? And are you guys doing anything to sort of address that?
Good question. I think they are quite expensive, but I think, we as horse people, not as governance, but as horse people, we've sort of brought that on ourselves because our expectations are very, very high. The higher level you go, the more you want. So you want, very, very good footing. You want certain stabling. You want certain types of judges. You want certain ring sizes, and you're not satisfied with, my childhood of you go outside the barn and whatever is outside your barn is footing, and wherever your ring is. Horse shows when I was a kid were just in big grass fields, and some of them didn't even have fences around them. Things have changed a lot since then. Do I think A shows are expensive? Sure. I shiver when I have to go pay bills because I have horses that show, and we have to be very careful about it because we can't, I'm not made of money. I'm not a wealthy person. So we have to be very cautious where we take our horses and get our most bang for the buck. But yeah, I think, as I told you last week, there's always going to be people who have high expectations and high dollars to spend on things, and people who are like that want that environment. And I'm not really sure It's like if I wanted to go stay in the Ritz-Carlton, but I wanted to pay the price for the Holiday Inn. I don't think the Ritz-Carlton would accept my Holiday Inn payment.
Yeah. No, I understand. I guess my question is, I mean, I understand why some people want to show at WEF and some people are happy for them, it's better value to show it at a more simple venue or a one-day show, and it's a lot less expensive. But my question is, from a USCF, USHJA standpoint, why give more points to somebody who shows at a more expensive facility or more prestige just because there's a bigger arena, there's more prize money, there's more divisions, there's bigger bleachers? But what does that have to do with the competitiveness and the points and your chance of getting some sort of award or recognition? Why tie those things together?
So it's been several years now since the last increment change was made, but that last increment change to the chart made the gap between the different areas much, much lower. I'd have to pull up the rule book and actually look at the point gap, but it's not particularly large where it used to be huge. Now what you get is a slight bump up in points, and for any level that you go to, there's the possibility of the number of horses that you compete against as well. And to me, we'd have to sit and do the math, and somebody who's better at math than me would have to handle this project. You have to see is, should we go to a system where you get points only for those that you compete against? Therefore, if you go to, let's say, a regional 1 show, and there's 50 people in your class, and then you go to a premier show, the old AA, and you have 3 people in your class, should you get more points at the C show? Maybe. It's possible. Yeah. But we would definitely need someone really good at math to sit down and figure out if we were going to make an unintended consequence from that. That's always important.
Yeah. Well, I guess the principle that I'd like to put out there is in other sports and this same discipline in Europe, there's not these different show from a points, a show is a show. And
right.
There's a basic amount of safety and standards you have to meet. But after that, your results towards, awards, it should be based on, the toughness of competition. And there is a way to take a look at how good a rider is and how good a horse is. So for example, if I show up at a simple venue, but there's 20 really good horses and riders in my division that I beat, I kind of feel like that should count more than somebody that shows up at a really expensive venue and just beats a couple people. So out of principle, I think we should move towards more of like a merit based than a financially based point system.
Sure. Okay, so I just pulled up the point chart for hunters. Jumpers are different than hunters with points, but so the point gap between Premier and National is 5 points. From National to the B rated is 5 points, and then from B to C is 5 points. So you do have for first place, you swing between 10 points at C to 25 at AA. But you have to remember too that at a C or a B rated show, you're not going to have those national sections. You're not going to have junior hunters or amateur owner hunters. And you will see the C-rated stuff at A and AA show at national and premier shows, but they're restricted there to the C-rated point chart. Does that make sense to you?
Not really. A little, kind of. It's a little over my head. I need to study it more. But that's another point. Okay. Is I feel like it's gotten convoluted, and there's so much minutia around it that really, to get an award or to understand how the points work, it's really about like diving into the rule book. I feel like we could sort of streamline the system so that it made more sense to more people.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. But when you say it's gotten more complicated, it's actually always been complicated. Well, not always. I haven't been part of the Federation since its inception. But I would say, since I started really showing and paying attention in the 80s, the increment system in some form or another has been there with all the crazy point charts and qualifying dates. I mean, it is very difficult to explain this to people. And I do that on a daily basis as a trainer, is explain to people, what they're qualifying for, which point chart, how you track your points. So, I mean, streamlining it and simplifying it, sure. I mean, I'm always willing to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to the people at USCF that count points, and they say that every discipline has a completely different point chart, a completely different map. And that's part of the reason why things are so expensive. I mean, we're hiring people to count points. That's their whole career. And it's so convoluted. Like, I've called the people at USCF and they're like, yeah, this is a nightmare to try to figure out, all these. They said that it's all written by independent committees. So there's not like one centralized person that this is how we calculate points. Every committee for every discipline has come up with some random, this show, you multiply it by 2.5. You have to be a mathematician, and I don't think that makes for good spectator sport either. You should know who won and who's winning. It should be obvious in a sport. So I guess we agree that it should be,
I'm always happy to look at things from a different perspective.
Okay. And then just again, explain to me one more time the rationale, because I have a hard time understanding it. Is basically, my understanding is, as you go from a C to an A show, the size of the arena, the total number of divisions, whether or not hot food is served before the show starts, the size of the bleachers, the amount of shade, the total prize money at the show, as those things increases, so does the rating level of the show, and obviously the cost of the competitor, and the amount of points that competitors get. So can you kind of explain to me what's the rationale?
So hang on. You're right and you're not right all at the same time. So well before standards, you were talking about standards, okay? Before standards ever existed, the structure of, let's just use the old names because I think it's easier for people. AA, single A, B, C, local member. Those are the old names, okay? So those existed, and it was simply based on prize money at that time, I believe, nothing else. And so you could go to a AA show, the current premiere, and you had no guarantee of what you were going to find there whatsoever. You could have a parking lot with a white chain around it and some jumps in it and a lot of prize money, and that could be your premiere show. Okay, you could go to a beautiful grass field and with beautiful jumps, and that could be your C show. So a few years ago, it's been, I don't know, at least 6 or 7 years ago, USHJA was asked to create the standards for shows, what you would need to find when you went to each level of show. And so we defined them. USCF at the time asked us to actually be in charge of compliance, then they changed their mind. They wanted to be in charge of compliance, which is fine because they are the regulator. And at that time, they started sending compliance people out, and they realized that the standards, which the show managers had helped us write, they weren't clear enough yet. So we just did a redo of those standards. So that's why I say you are partially right, but not 100%.
Okay, but from just a principle standpoint, what's the rationale behind correlating those parameters with points? Versus, I feel like the analogy I make is I've been playing tennis for USTA, and I beat, so I'm part of their whole national draw, their bracket, and so I beat a player last week, and USTA asked me, who did you beat and what was the score? They didn't ask me, how big were the bleachers, what was the hot food like, what were how many other matches were going on around you, was there a pool at the club? Like, to me, I'm just unclear why that would affect me. I feel like when I go to a USCF or USHJA horse show and I beat somebody, I'm like, hey, listen, I beat 10 riders. They were really good riders. But USCF, USHJA is like, whoa. where did you beat them? What was the standards like? And there's a lot of venues now where you're not going to get any credit, even though it's a great horse show.
So are you referring to unrecognized shows?
Yeah, or light
Okay.
shows.
I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yeah. I mean, why not? Why make it so hard to become recognized and to be legitimate and to be A-rated? Why is that so important?
Well, I think part of what you're talking, you have so many little tiny pieces of so many things, and you don't have them quite yet in the right order, but yet is the most important word in that sentence, okay? You just need to change something, you need to understand. I've spent years now trying to understand the system to make change. It's not as easy as just coming and flipping a lever and making change. So remember that when people are qualifying for things or riding for points for awards, they're doing it at a specific level of their choice. Okay, so right now, if I decide tomorrow that my college age kid who's been showing maybe in the meter 10 jumpers, if I want her to do the Grand Prix, and I go out and get a Grand Prix for her, horse for her, and I put her in the ring, I can do that. That's my right. Should I? No, she'd get killed. That would be a really poor decision on my part. But that would be my choice to put her wherever I felt she should go. So if I want to qualify for a national award, I'm going to go to a higher level show because that's where those points are counting from. If I want to qualify for one of the qualifying shows, I'm going to go to a national show. If I want to go to qualify for a zone thing, I'm going to try to go to a more zone-based thing. So it is very, very complicated. I do agree with that. But there's nothing, if I could ride my best out of 1,000 riders and earn 100 as my score at a C-rated show, and that's still not going to qualify me for something on a national level.
And do you feel like that's right?
I don't know if it's right or wrong. It is our current reality. Again, I'm always happy to examine that and see if there's a better way to do it. But I think part of the reason that people don't go to some of the higher level shows is definitely money, without any question. But you also have to know that it's not just money. Sometimes it's time. People can't leave their families, they can't leave their jobs, and so they compete at a much different level where they can stay close to home, do their one show, and then, come back home and watch their other child play tennis, and then report their results to USTA. So again, just lots and lots of things to think about. I don't want you to think I'm not interested in your ideas. I'm just trying to get you to grasp the reality of where we are now. Okay. And then you'll get me to grasp how we should be different and change.
Yeah. Well, I just think that there's a huge correlation between the money you spend and the points you get. And so it's just sort of a system where you're creating an elitist from a horse show standpoint, you're just creating an elitist sport. And that's my theory of why we're pricing out millions of people. There's a really cool show that I just learned about in the Plains, Virginia. You probably know about it. It's under the lights. There's only 2 classes. There is prize money. It's like $40 out the door to show in it.
Yep, that's Twilight, I think, is the name of that one. Yep.
Yeah. And so I'm just thinking, why isn't that show, that class is really competitive. I love the national horse show, the national bracket that you guys have set up. I think that's a huge, huge game changer for me versus the horse of the year, model that to me is like, that's not even how, no athlete would structure a sport like that, in my opinion. Winners have to go head to head. That's just my opinion. So I love the national championship model you've set up, but I'm just thinking, why wouldn't the winner of that single class, that Twilight class, it's a competitive meter 10 class, beautiful class, it's totally inexpensive. Why wouldn't they get points? Just out of a principle here. I know that there's so many rules and red tape preventing that show from ever being recognized by USCF or USHJA at that price. But that actual accomplishment of winning that class, I think is a lot harder than winning a meter 10 class at a lot of AA shows.
why can't a show like that be part of the Federation family? And I surely do not speak for USEF at all, by the way. I want to be so clear about that. So, USHJA has looked at counting points for shows that are outside the recognized horse show world. And to do that, we have to follow the Federation's rules to do that. So, we have to make sure that that show does certain things, so they have to be safe. The people there have to do the safe sport training. They have to use licensed judges. The judges have to be background checked, and more things than that. And there has to be drug testing. And immediately when you start putting those things on, some of them are time costs and some of them are actually financial costs, and they start to bring the cost of things up again. And some shows do not want to be part of a recognized structure. They're totally happy as they are. Yeah. And I respect that greatly, by the way. Like, I think that we as horse people could do a lot better job getting together and being a force for positive things. But I don't think that people, not all shows want to join. They're very, very happy with what they do. I mean, I've never been to Twilight, but I hear it's a wonderful experience. Yeah. I've heard it from so many people. People really enjoy going there. Yeah.
I just think that we need to find a way to make the recognized stuff just better value for people. Otherwise, it's going to all go. I mean, if you can get that kind of an experience for $40, why are you going to spend 10, 20 times that for, you know what I mean? It just.
Well, then I'm taking off my governance hat and I'm going to put on my trainer hat for a second and say that we as trainers in probably the 80s did this to ourselves. We wanted to be in a place where we could take everyone. We could take our walk trot rider, our children's hunter person, our junior jumper, our Grand Prix horse, whatever it is that we have, our unrecognized 2-6 horse, and we wanted to show everyone at the same venue. And so we created this market where the box show was born. And, I don't think that when we were all doing this as individuals, that we saw that there could possibly be a downside to having things be so expensive. And then if you want to look at it too, is then smaller show managers feel crushed out and like they can't survive. So, they leave the USEF sphere, as it were, and go off to unrecognized because they feel like they can then afford to do that.
Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of created this rift. I've
Agreed.
Heard a lot of people talking about it where they don't feel welcome and it's just kind of divided and
well, horse, I mean, again, I am a horse person, so I feel like I can speak just frankly as Mary, the horse trainer, is, again, sometimes we do that to ourselves. We are a very insular group and we do not necessarily welcome people who are different from us. And we can become very narrow, which is not a good thing. I mean, I listened to a thing, you brought up tennis, so I'll re-bring up tennis. I listened to a thing on NPR several years ago on how did tennis go from an elite sport to a sport of the people. And they said it was when they realized that any kid or adult could get a tennis racket from, even if they had to buy the cheapest tennis racket or borrow a tennis racket and a tennis ball, and all they needed was a wall. And they could hit the ball against the wall and they could learn how to play. And then they realized they would be good at it. So then they started to play at the public court. This is sort of goes back to your riding school thing. And suddenly tennis became a sport for everyone, not just the very elite, which is what it used to be, a complete elite sport. And so, there are models out there. IEA is a model for that. IEA is like the tennis racket of the horse show world at this moment. Some people don't care for it, but I think it's great because it's brought a lot of people into the riding world that would not have necessarily been there. And then that has then continued through collegiate as well. I think we have to embrace things like IEA, and the ability for people where people don't have to buy a horse, and they can get into the sport, in a very gentle way.
Yeah. Okay.
But let's also face it, that riding is really, really expensive because we have to support the horse. And supporting a horse, where do you live, Brian?
Maryland.
Okay. I don't know. I'm actually from DC originally, as I told you, but I don't know how the landscape is down there. But in New Jersey, it is frighteningly expensive to keep horses right now. I have a riding school, and boy, it's hard to keep riding schools going. If you're going to treat your horses well, it costs a lot of money.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think people do want to treat their horses well.
Yeah, definitely. But I think the best thing, this is something I've been thinking about for a while, but one of the best things you can do for horses, I think, is to be growing the sport and educating kids on how to take care of horses and creating more kids that love horses, that want to be a part of the sport. And I know that sport horses don't necessarily always have the best life, but I think that if you compare them to other animals that taste good, that aren't good indoor pets, I think they have it pretty good. And that's kind of the reality, is that horses, animals in general, need to have a purpose for humans. Otherwise, it doesn't go so well for them. So I think that all things.
Yes.
I'm getting off track here with that. But let's move on to education, because you said that everything I see is that USHJA, one of your primary functions is education. The criticism I gave you when I talked to you is that I've been riding horses my whole life. You guys have been around for 15 years. I've been a trainer for a little while. I can't really, and I could be totally wrong about this, but I haven't come across like any USHJA education. And so maybe you can point me to where those programs are and where I've missed it, or maybe where I've gotten it and not even realized it.
Sure, happy to. We've got a lot of things cooking and more things to come. So we have Horsemanship Quiz Challenge, which at this moment is for juniors only, and we're hoping to evolve that into also an adult program, and that is strictly horsemanship. We have a manual which is on our website, which was written by our volunteers. It's about to get an update as of this coming December. It's going from, I think, 180 pages to 300 and something pages of just solid, great horsemanship information. So those people take online quizzes, qualify to go to finals, where they then have to take a closed book test, which is quite difficult. And then they go to a practicum and show they actually have hands-on knowledge of what they're doing. And I have to say, I'm really, really thrilled. One of our great horsemen, Carlton Brooks, actually is working with me towards the idea of letting some of these kids come and intern with him, which I think is phenomenal. So we have that. We have trainer certification, of course, which is, at this moment, we're working on some changes to that program, but that is also chock full of information about how to be a trainer and different ideas around the American Hunter Jumper forward riding system. We have Emerging Athletes, which is a talent search and knowledge program for people who are 25 and under. And as of this year, we've added some purpose-built 3-foot sessions that are open to any age person. So we have adults that do that as well, because we know that we need to start serving our adults better. We have, along with our Zone Jumper Team Championship, we have the Gold Star Clinics, if you qualify for those. And they are phenomenal as well. They're like Emerging Athletes on steroids for jumper riders. Soon we will have our Platinum Master Clinic, which is, again, for jumper riders who qualify. And most of the Emerging Athletes clinics and the Gold Star clinics can be audited and are free to audit as well. So there are a lot of things out there. We're working more and more right now on developing an entire educational curriculum for our recognized riding academies.
Great.
We've just recently posted a job for a director of education, because that is one of our largest focus areas at this moment.
Great. Yeah, that's exactly where I'd love to see you guys head. The model that I was looking at, and I'll just give you my 2 cents on what it should look like, and then there's a lot of comments here, so we'll open it up for questions after this. You know, my wife grew up riding in France, and these are some of the books. They have a program 1 through 7 or 1 through 8. Like this is like the textbook 4 through 5, and you start off as a level 1 rider, and then you move up to level 2. And the equivalent of their recognized riding schools, they want to see you pass a written test, a riding test, and there's a show record component in order for you to get stamped as a level 1, as a level 2. And those types of criteria unlock privileges for you in the horse show world, rather than there's really nothing but your wallet that will unlock kind of privileges in the horse show world in the US. So for example, an A show in France, you have to be a level 7 rider and pass all those tests. They give you a level 7 license. Like my wife got a level 7 license, and the curriculum is really good. And then, you know, if you guys did that and you gave that curriculum, because right now every riding academy is just creating their own random curriculum, versus if you guys could harness the absolute best riders, best horsemen, and just create amazing curriculum, lesson plans, you know, workbooks, that to me would make a lot of sense to kind of educate the whole country.
We are working on that. We're working on our recognized riding academies becoming part of an educational alliance built around curriculum. And I mean, you're singing my song, because I grew up in a riding school that did have what you described, where we had to test and we couldn't move up based on only our riding ability. We had to test out of our various areas. And then I went as a young person to the British Horse Society, which is where my teaching degree is from. And it's the same type of thing over there. I'm so fascinated to hear what people have to say on here as to whether or not they would accept a system in which you had to show knowledge other than your riding skill to advance or to unlock things from a horse show perspective. I don't know. We'll hear what they have to say.
We'll definitely hear what they have to say, but that's also like the U.S. government asking the kids, like, do you guys want to have mandatory education, or do you want to just, I'll tell you what, I'll just put an ebook up on our website, and maybe you find it, maybe you don't.
No, I hear you, but you know, horse people, they don't like to be told what to do. They are, I call them the rugged individualists. And, you know, a lot of people don't want to feel that another person is, in quotes, better than them and would be able to educate them. I'm all about education, Brian. So I'm hoping still have a little tiny idea for a huge education symposium that I'm still working on. And hopefully through things like that, people will see the benefit of being educated instead of throwing their hands up in the air and saying, well, you're not the right one to educate me, or I don't have time. But we should be lifetime learners, all of us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's open it up. All
right, open it up. Let them at me.
Okay, here we go. There's 21 comments here already.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So
one assumes that I'm smart enough on tech to actually read these while I'm talking to you.
Let's see here. I understand all of this, but to say that all of the things she's listed is the reason why costs have gone up when other places in the world have all of these things doesn't hold up. Why does USHJA keep catering only to those who want the writs? Most people don't. So that's not who they should try to cater to, not the 1%. Anyways, that's not really a question, more of a comment. Let's just start fresh here. If you guys want to ask a question, just type a question in the comments, and we'll let Mary. There's been kind of a conversation going on here, so we're not going to read the whole conversation. But if you have a question for Mary, go ahead and type it in the comments, and we will we'll see what we can do.
How do I get into the comments?
Well, just whoever just said that, just ask your question. Looks like
Brian, it's Duncan. How are you?
Good. How you doing, Duncan?
It's amazing. Mary, it's Duncan. Nice to see you.
Hey, Duncan. Nice to talk to you.
Hey, I was taking notes during the whole thing, and I appreciate, you know, it's a little bit like assuming a presidency and you run on a a platform, and then when you get in there, there's a whole bunch of other issues that you have to deal with.
So true.
And my one comment is about riding academies. I've got several that I wrote down, but I'll try and be brief. Is that they are one of several sources of new customers. They're very important, but I have one drum that I beat pretty hard, which is that we have detached ourselves from the agricultural sources of the sport. And there's a pretty easy way to reattach, which would be through the county and state fairs, which traditionally were some of the greatest venues. And I'm wondering, I'm actually going to say that I would volunteer to assist with that.
Great.
Because, you know, there's a guy out here. I've got a 9-year-old daughter, and actually she just turned 10. And, you know, one of the great experiences for us was at an Orange County horse show. We were hanging out with a friend, and he's got kids too, and they do 4-H, and we got invited to see the mohair goats. And it was amazing. And there's this huge crowd of people, and I think that's one of the ways that we could tap into spectators that are already there. So I just want to throw that out as a suggestion, and that and the related concept is that horsemanship that doesn't teach about where the horses come from is missing a few chapters. And again, I'd offer to volunteer to help develop educational materials around that.
Great. Well, thank you. I'll be in touch.
Okay, great.
Okay, we've got one here from Robert. How can we get riders who are currently showing in the collegiate scene to participate in recognized shows?
Yeah, that's me. I just unmuted.
Okay.
How's it going?
Hey, how are you?
Good. So yeah, I'm Robert from New York. I actually just graduated from Long Island University, and we have an amazing equestrian program. We're actually just going D1, and we're on Long Island, quote unquote, the Gold Coast. So there's a bunch of really big properties. Like, we have a beautiful facility, and I just started riding recently, maybe 3 years ago. So I'm not like a lot of the younger riders whose parents kind of, you know, brought them up through the industry, got them a horse and a lot of different things. You know, not too far outside of New York City, it's a lot more populated. So there's not too many places to ride. And I was fortunate enough to transfer to a university that had an equestrian hunter jumper program, equitation, all that type of stuff. So from my viewpoint, you know, I don't even have like the type of money to go out and, you know, I could maybe get a horse for $2,000, but like the housing and the veterinary fees and the food and all that stuff that comes along with it, that's a whole nother ball game in terms of cost, not to mention the cost of, you know, participating in one of these rated shows. So I basically have been kind of trying to think about how I can continue to participate in the equestrian industry while working a normal job in finance, which is what I do right now. And basically, I kind of was thinking...
Join the club, Robert. That's what everyone's trying to figure out.
Yeah, but I was basically thinking, like, you know, we should start some type of, like, organization that we partner with local high schools and stuff like that, because there's a lot of, like, soccer fields and baseball fields that I feel like are underutilized. And these schools, they can get, you know, kids in from like, hey, we can go and talk to one school and be like, we want 5 guys, 5 girls. And the first year we train them in equestrian. And in addition to working with these students and teaching them equestrian, we can also teach them high technology types of things. And we can be like, okay, if you continue with this program, get good grades in school, you know, you can participate in these rated shows, and that'll also help you get a scholarship to go to, you know, any type of college, whether it's Long Island University with their equestrian program or Cornell or something like that. And then that can help them, you know, go further in the equestrian world if they so choose. So, you know, I just want to know, how can we, you know, help people like me who are new to the industry, as well as, you know, people who are very young who may not be exposed to the type of thing and who maybe want to participate but don't have the opportunity to do so.
Well, definitely for people of middle school or high school age, IEA, I think, is probably the easiest way for them to access the horse show world, because that's what they do. You know, you can, for a very limited cost, you can join an IEA team at various levels and, you know, get to show all the way through their finals if you have enough talent. And I think people come, all different levels of people from the recognized world show there, and people who have never done anything with horses at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very interesting model for people like you, fresh out of college, getting a job. We get lots of people like that at our barn, and they're our lesson students. And, then when they want, it's tough for them because they're working a lot of hours to try to afford what they do, and yet it's still really costly. But I think, my students over the years have found ways to advance. They work as working students for me. They show interest, and, you have to find somebody who's willing to give you opportunity. And I think opportunity does exist for those who really hold up their hand and want something. Trust me, I came from a public riding school, center of Washington, D.C.
I think it'd be cool if we had some type of program where we really made an initiative to reach out to local schools, and once it grew to something, there could even be competitions where it's hey, Long Island has a strong program, so we do a Long Island versus Chicago, or a New York versus Pennsylvania type of thing, and it specifically starts through the school program in conjunction with you guys, and then it grows to something bigger like that.
Well, at this moment, I can't say that any part of the horse industry does a good job of publicizing itself to the outside world. When I was flying down to Lexington last week, I sat next to this lovely woman from the Bronx who's an actress who grew up in Lexington. She went to Keeneland all the time. And I said, "Did you ever think of riding?" And she said, "Well, is that available?" And I said, yeah, and clearly we're not doing a good enough job letting you know that it is. And she was so intrigued with the idea that she could ride.
Yeah,
we need to do better. Clearly, we need to do better.
Yeah. All right, that was my comment. And
thanks,
thank you,
Robert.
Brian, this is a cool group. Thanks for adding me.
Thank you, Robert. That's a good question.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I like this next question from Michaela. So one thing I learned about Germany is that just getting paid money does not make you an amateur. You can get paid $450 a month and still be an amateur. Matter of fact, it's hard to be a professional. You have to do an apprenticeship. You have to pass tests. You have to be good. Well, no, you don't have to be good, but you have to pass tests and you have to study, and it's hard to become a professional. In the U.S., it's hard to be an amateur. It's you get paid $1 and you're technically a professional. So what? And the other thing
it depends on what you're getting paid for. And the amateur rule is a really tricky question. Michaela, I really appreciate your question. So let's say Michaela comes to work for my farm, Knightsbridge, and she is a groom for me. Okay. So Michaela can do anything she wants to do while she's there, as long as she doesn't ride any of the horses that I get paid to train. And she doesn't lunge any of the horses that I get paid to train. Otherwise than that, she can work off all of her show expenses. Trust me, I've got people, young adults and kids working for me all the time to pay their horse show bills, but they don't ride other people's horses. They can bring a horse of their own or bring one of my horses that is their responsibility to take care of. But it's as soon as you cross over that gap, that's the difference.
So do you like that system?
I think rules are written because people are basically not straightforward. And so you have to write rules that contain people. So, there's plenty of people who, in a very well-meaning way, are probably no place near a professional, don't intend to be a professional. Those people don't need this rule. It's the people who are trying to cheat that need this rule.
But see, in Germany, amateurs will compete against professionals. It's just about it's about how good you are. So as you advance through the systems like we were talking about, where you become a level, 4 rider and a level 3 rider and a level 2 rider. So you could be a professional, but only, you know what I mean? Like in the US, you could be, just because you're a professional doesn't necessarily mean that you're very good. And just because you're an amateur doesn't mean that you're bad. I don't understand why getting paid or being sponsored is the criteria to separate riders in competitions. There's so many better ways.
The amateur classes are protected, and there has to be some, if you're going to have an amateur class, you have to have some guidelines of how that is protected from other people coming in. Whether it's the system that we have or something else is, something that we can definitely discuss, but a free-for-all doesn't work. And we have discussed in the past removing amateur classes altogether and just leaving it open, but people don't want that either. So
yeah, well, here's the model that I recommend. It's the same model that they have in Germany, which is the journey of a rider is on moving up through the classes. And you move up through classes when your show record and your written test and your riding test at these riding academies advance you to a new level. So some amateurs have all the time in the world just to ride. They've got a trust fund and they're just riding all the time. I mean, they're gonna, and some professionals are just teaching, working their ass all the time, aren't really riding that much and can't really, build up a show record. So the classes in Germany, it's basically, you know what I mean? If you have 20 meter 20 placings, then you're going to be in a certain class of rider, and that's who you're going to be competing against. Right, whether or not they're a professional or an amateur, you're going to all be riding at the same level. So those classes will be a lot more fair because it's more based on sort of your placings in the show world versus, you know what I mean? If some boot company gives me a pair of boots, that doesn't necessarily make me a better rider.
no.
Does that make sense?
It does. And, I think that what you're talking about is worthy of discussion. I'm not sure that people in the amateur area would agree with you at all. That's a pretty passionate group of people, and they like things the way they are in general. So I don't know. I definitely, you should be coming to the annual meeting in December and, coming and listening. I know it would be tough because it means taking time away from your job, and that means loss of funds for you and whatnot, but it's a really good place to come and listen to people and hear their points of view.
Yeah. Well, I think
Mary and Brian, could I say something real quick?
Of course.
Hi, this is Deloise, and I've been traveling actually to our zone championships this weekend at Tryon, so I've been able to catch most of this call. And Brian, Mary, I just want to point out one thing with this seeding thing that keeps coming back from tennis. This is a judge sport. The hunters are a judge sport. It's subjective. And if you beat somebody on the tennis court, you beat that person that day, and that's great. But you did that on your own, and it wasn't judged. I think that's a really important thing to remember. When you're talking about seeding people and giving them levels, that's not really a good comparison to bring in something like tennis where one single person is beating another player, because that's not how it works in the hunter ring. It may be how it works in the jumpers. They were great that day, didn't have any rails or was fastest in the jump off, whatever. But in the hunters, it's very, very important not to get mixed up in comparing other sports like tennis to horses in the hunter ring. The other thing I just want to point out is that the amount of time it takes for our horse community to grasp a program is phenomenally long. I kind of remember when the horsemanship quiz started, and everybody thought it was a joke. Now you need it in order to be even considered for the EAP program. And most trainers are a lot of trainers are requiring it for their kids coming up. But a few years ago, that was considered a real joke. So it took that long for this community to wrap its head around that particular program. And the other programs are just as slow. And I don't think people realize the amount of time. I mean, I'm one to criticize a lot of things because when I get mad, I get real mad. But I also understand that I have seen change where I didn't think there was going to be change within this community. And it takes a thought, and then it takes a year of that thought, and then it takes somebody getting brave enough to put it forward, and it takes a whole nother year, and then it takes 2 more years after that for people to accept it. So what we're all talking about in this discussion today is cool, but nothing's going to change overnight. I mean, that's just
I think we're losing Deloise. Deloise, thank you. Thank you so much for your comments. I'm not sure she can hear. I'm glad to hear that you noticed that there's change. I mean, one of the biggest things that I have worked on in the past a little bit more than 2 years is, opening things up, letting more people participate in governance, in changes for our sport. And as Deloise mentions, these changes take a lot of time. And as Brian mentioned much earlier, you run on one platform, but soon you get your feet in the irons and the horse that you're riding is running off in one direction and you got to fix it. So.
Any other questions before we let Mary go? We also have to give away. Mary was generous enough. She's put together some USHJA swag. So we got to figure out how we're going to give that away on the call. She's got a backpack, a leather notebook, a pen, a tumbler, and a cooling towel, or USHJA sun visor. I have a question, Mary. Why are sun visors only for women? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's what my awards coordinator says. So she's pretty smart. I'm going to go with her opinion. Occasionally I do see guys in visors. Do guys wear visors?
My wife bought me a visor and I told her I can't wear one because I'm a dude, but she's like, why? Your face is getting beat up. Like, you need to wear a visor. That was just a good question of hers. I don't know why. That kind of goes back to the whole rebranding. If you're looking to get 1 million people in here, you're going to have to find a way to get rid of the stigma that it's such a feminine sport too. That's just...
I hear you. Well, who would like to win something? If you want, the next person who types a comment is my winner. So type
Except
in.
I can't type anything.
You can't type.
No,
who is
I
this?
can't type either.
Oh no! Well, I just see Samsung SMGN50U is our winner. I don't know who that is, of course, but
whoever just typed in "I would!" exclamation mark, give me your name. Somebody wrote "I would!" exclamation mark. That was Samsung. That's me, Karen Estevez. I don't know if I'm saying
all
that.
right, Karen Estevez. Karen, I'm actually going to type my email address in here, and you're going to send me your address, and then I'm going to get USHJA to ship directly to you. Except I can't even remember my email address.
My daughter would love a new backpack. It's Duncan.
There you go.
Okay, so Jason, you disagree that hunter jumpers is considered a feminine sport in the eyes of the country as a whole?
I completely disagree with that statement. As a show announcer, yes, at the lower levels we see a lot more younger ladies, girls and whatnot. But when we get more to the professional levels, when the guys come out showing at 17, 18 years old, they've been riding forever. Let's look at Bill Worthington for an example. Billy's been riding his whole entire life, but and he showed a little bit competitively as a kid, but now he's a professional rider. And I can look at Alan Caron. I mean, I can give you names off the list on the East Coast anyway of people that guys have been riding forever, but they don't. We start riding because of the girls at the barn. I mean, I completely disagree with that statement. Sorry, I just do.
I'm just
fundamentally,
fundamentally,
my barn is 50-50 men and women, and it's. I would say more often than not, we're more men here at the barn than we are women at my particular farm. But that's I'm in South Florida, but it's a little different. I guess it depends on where you are location wise, but like a lot of the shows I announce, half of your classes in your really young, your short stirrup and that stuff are 50-50 boys and girls. And then when you get to like your 2 foot, 2'3", 2'6" sections, it's mainly, I'll call them young women because by that time they're 13 or so. And then by the time you get to your 3, 6, 4 foot and above, it's back to 50-50 again, especially in the jumper world.
So Mary, what's the percentage of men to women in USHJA approximately?
Great question, but I don't know that answer. I can find out.
Okay. All right, maybe we don't have a problem with men in the sport. Maybe it's 50-50. I would guess it's like 90-10, but I could be wrong. Okay, any other questions? All
Wow,
right.
you guys are an easy audience.
That is easy.
Well, my email's there, and I'm always welcome people to send comments to me. Facebook is the hardest place for me to see comments, only because somehow I miss them, and then people think I don't care. But I try to access them there as well.
Awesome.
If you're out in California this week, I'll be doing a town hall in San Juan Capistrano. So anyone who wants to come there, please do so. I'd love to meet you.
Awesome.
Hey,
Thank you,
Brian.
Mary. Really appreciate it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Brian, this is Lacey Storms. Mary, I had a quick question, a clarification question for you.
Sure.
It'll save me sending an email.
No worries.
Going back to the amateur discussion a few minutes ago, it is confusing, like you said, and I try to keep up on it and keep educated for some of my clients. But I recently had one that came to me or wants to come to me and wants to ride and lease a horse from me that I own or my family owns, and wants to ride that horse and other horses that I own in exchange for her training. I was under the impression that that was not allowed, but my ears perked a minute ago when you had said that it was horses that were being paid for by outside clients to be in training with me. Am I correct? Is she allowed to ride a horse that I own or my family owns in exchange for her training?
There is an email address. It's amateurinquiry@usef.org.
Okay.
Which I would send that specific question to them. My answer would be, I think she's fine leasing a horse from you.
Okay.
You have to be really careful beyond that. Once it all has to do with remuneration. Once someone rides, drives, lunges horse and receives remuneration, they are no longer an amateur. So
okay.
You just want to check that second part out.
Okay. Yeah,
it can get a little messy.
It's confusing, and it's hard because I don't want to, I wouldn't do it vindictively or viciously. It's more of one of those things that it can be a little confusing, and I completely understand not riding other clients' horses that are in training with me, but I have several older, retired Grand Prix horses that she would love to hack during the week to keep them in shape, to keep her in shape. And then, I would give her credits off of her training, So
definitely write to USDF. They're very good about answering. And
okay.
Then you'll have an official opinion, and then you keep it with you. And if you're questioned, you can pull it out and say, no, look, this is what they told me.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks for the guidance.
Thanks,
and thank
Lacey.
you, Mary. And yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you, Brian, for hosting this. It's been really interesting, and it's really fun to watch all of these things happening.
Awesome. Thank you, Lacey. All right, guys, we will wrap it up. Thank you so much, Mary, and let's stay in touch. Appreciate you being so accessible.
All right, you guys have a good day. Thanks.
All right. Bye, guys.